The struggle to maintain that wonder and that divine spark.
That's right!
In a world that's seemingly cruel.
Alrighty then.
And out of control. Also, the grief aspect of it. How do you keep that together when you've been hit by a freight train? And, I have. And I know what that's like.
You win! I'm done.
I don't believe that any actor can really do a part unless that part finds them. You don't find parts, they find you when you're ready to do them.
Spread my wings and fly away.
And when you're informed and you have those feelings. So to me, when I paint, I'm being painted. When I write, I'm being written. And when I act, I'm being acted through it. It's there to express.
Unforgettable facial expressions became his calling card. Thanks to his charisma, biting jokes, and extraordinary heroes, he is known all over the world. He is a man of moods. He is a man of improvisation. Today on the Biographer channel, we will reveal the secrets and the most touching moments from the life of Jim Carrey. Why did he struggle with depression? Why did he put a sock on his genitals? And is he to blame for the death of Cathriona White? Get comfortable, we're getting started.
I am your beloved Count Olaf.
You have probably heard the childhood of this popular comedian was not so rosy. Jim Eugene Carrey was born on January 17, 1962, in the Canadian city of Newmarket. He became the fourth and the youngest child in the family of a housewife and accountant. His mother, Kathleen, was a failed singer, and his father, Percy, was a self-taught saxophonist who had given up his musical dreams to support his family. The family was poor.
But when I was about 14 or 15, my father lost his job, and I actually became homeless for quite some time. Of course, I grew up in Canada, so I thought we had just gone camping.
Kathleen was often sick and was addicted to pain medication. Her mental state made life more complicated. Her hypochondria, combined with neurosis, led to the fact that Kathleen was considered crazy. Jim's mother often talked about how she would die soon. This placed in the soul of the boy a great fear that his parents might suddenly pass away. I remember being 7 years old and my mother at the dinner table saying things like, "My brain is deteriorating at an incredible rate," or "My angina's acting up, I could go at any time." Things that would just shake me to the core. That's why the little boy took all his time to make his mother laugh, so that it would become a little easier for her. And that was how his first comical performances appeared. The future actor grew up closed and lonely, therefore creativity became an outlet for him. He painted, composed poetry, and made funny faces. In an interview, Carrey admitted that the mirror was his only friend. "Well, I spent most of my time in my room staring at a mirror. I never knew I was supposed to socialize." Later, he realized that he could bring smiles not only to his family, but also to classmates and teachers at school. The love of grimacing was so strong that the boy was allowed to make for his class a 15-minute performance every day. Jim began recording skits on camera and even ventured to send 80 of his funny face photos to the popular comedy show Carol Burnett. At that time, Carrey was only 11 years old, but the first disappointment awaited him. He received neither an invitation nor even an answer. The challenges for his family were just beginning. When Jim was 12, his father lost his job and they lost their home. Therefore, the Carrey family had to travel around the country and look for any opportunities to earn money. So, having found a temporary shelter in the suburbs of Toronto, Carrey Sr. went to work as a security guard, and his children, after school in the evenings, also worked as security guards and cleaners. Jim became insecure. He began to get angry at the whole world. Antidepressants and humor came to the rescue, which helped to throw out internal aggression. At the age of 14, Jim got into bad company and carried a bat with him everywhere. "I was angry," he remembered. "My father was hurting, so I blamed the world.
Well, when my father lost his job, I was pissed. It was like
Sad.
one of those things. My dad, how dare the universe?
Right.
At the age of 15, another disappointment awaited the comedian. And this time, it was about the stage. His father brought him to the local Yuck Yucks Club, where the young man was given the opportunity to speak to the public. The family needed additional income. Percy saw the ability of his son, so he suggested Jim use the humorous talent to earn more money. An attempt to become a stand-up comedian failed miserably. Jim left the stage booed.
Well, that was Yuck Yucks. That was this place called Yuck Yucks. It was downtown Toronto. It was like it was a tragically hip place with, people with, dark colors on.
And this was the last straw for the young man. He stopped performing and withdrew into himself. Despite all the hardships, Jim remembers his parents with warmth. She was very sick in a lot of ways. She was lovely too. She was always there for me. She was always there in the house, he said about his mother. And he even perceived health problems as part of their lives, ending his memories of his mother with the conclusion, in a sense, we're all abandoned. The comedian's relationship with his father was a little different. Jim admired him and wanted to be the same as Percy. He said he was an incredible person. My dad was the guy who could just stand up in the middle of a room and everybody would be wrapped around his finger. Both his parents and his 3 siblings supported Carrey in his comedic endeavors. In one of the interviews, he admitted that they considered him a special child. I was always from another planet, but one that they enjoyed and encouraged. They'd all be like, yeah, drag Jim out here. The rough patch for the Carreys ended when Percy got a job at a steel mill in the port city of Hamilton, Ontario. The family settled in the nearby town of Burlington, where Jim lived for another 8 years. There he graduated from Aldershot High School and even formed the Spoons musical band, playing in new wave style. When Jim turned 16, he decided that he had enough of his studies. By this point, marks and relationships at school had completely deteriorated. His father cried, but didn't forbid him anything. Although later, Carrey Jr. said that sometimes he really wanted this. After graduating from school, Jim went to work at the same steel mill. He later admitted that if he hadn't had a career in show business, he probably would have worked at the same factory and thought that this was the best job in the world. But it was the support of his father, who took him to all the clubs in Toronto, that helped him achieve more and become who he is. Carrey said the experience taught him to look at failures differently. As his father's story showed, it's always possible to fail at something that seems safe. After all, it's much better to fall down doing what you love to do and truly want to do.
I learned that you can fail at what you don't love, so you might as well do what you love. There's really no choice to be made.
In 1979, Jim decided to try his hand again on the same stage at the Yuck Yucks Club. This time, the audience took his performance well. Since that time, Jim began cooperation with the manager, Litris Spivak, who took the guy under his protection and made him a real local star. People from all over the neighborhood came to Jim's performances. The comedian quickly moved from open mic to paid performances. Having conquered Toronto, the young artist moved to Los Angeles, where he was just as readily accepted on local stages. And it was here, on this stage, that Jim was noticed by another eminent comedian, Rodney Dangerfield, and offered to act as his opening act during the tour. Of course, Jim agreed. But the collaboration didn't last long. At the end of the tour, Dangerfield settled in Los Angeles, and Jim decided to take a crack at Hollywood. So the young man began to work in the club, the Comedy Store, and attended all available auditions at the same time. Among them, there was an attempt to pass the audition for the program Saturday Night Live, channel NBC season 1980 to 1981, but it failed. In addition, Joel Schumacher arranged for him to audition for the DC Cab movie, but nothing came of it. In his performances, Carrey mostly parodied celebrities. He enjoyed success with the public, and in 1984, People magazine named him one of the best young American comedians. After the experience with Rodney, Jim decided to do something unusual for that time. He didn't try to imitate his predecessors, but on the contrary, he discarded all the knowledge and experience that he saw, and just let himself be who he actually was. There was a notable case when the 20-year-old actor went on the stage of the club completely naked, except for the sock worn on his penis. Jim's one of those people who comedians talk about like he's in a different business than the rest of us. His friend Judd Apatow talked about him. In an interview, he spoke about an incident during a performance at the Comedy Store. The audience didn't like what they saw on stage so much that they began to throw chairs at the actor. They only calmed down when Jim announced that he was leaving the stage. Then I crawled through the audience on my hands and knees, popped up behind the piano, and started banging on the keys, singing, "I hate you all, you gave me cancer." And then I got in the car and I cried all the way home. In 1982, Jim began to conquer television. He appeared in the stand-up show An Evening at the Improv, and in 1983, he starred in the all-night entertainment show. From this period, the comedian had new dreams, not just to entertain people on stage, but from TV screens as well. Gradually, dreams began to come true, though not immediately successful. In 1981, Carrey landed the lead role of a young comedian in Rubberface, which became for him, in some way, an autobiographical film. The tape tells about the merry fellow Tony, who temporarily works as a dishwasher in a nightclub and dreams of becoming a stand-up show star in the club where he works. As you probably guessed, Tony was played by Jim. In 1983, a comedy musical with the participation of a young actor, Copper Mountain, was released. Both films were low budget and received extremely low ratings in the end. On IMDb, Copper Mountain is rated 2 out of 10. In 1984, the artist was invited to the children's animated sitcom The Duck Factory. From that moment on, Jim had a feeling that his career was going up. He even invited his parents to Los Angeles. However, the program closed after 3 months and his relatives had to be sent home. But during its existence, the show managed to give Jim a lot of useful contacts and attract the attention of directors. In 1984, another story with his participation was released. It was Finders Keepers by Richard Lester. The film was an adaptation of Charles Dennis's novel The Next to Last Train Ride, where Jim got a small role as an empty-headed teenager named Lane Bindleclough. The film received mixed reviews. The average viewer didn't really understand the picture. It has just 2 out of 10 on Rotten Tomatoes. Critics warmly received the movie. James Monaco reviewed the film in his book, The Movie Guide, writing a crazy, quirky comedy from director Lester that starts slowly and warms up to provide some funny moments. In 1985, a comedy, Once Bitten, with elements of horror films was released. It was about a difficult vampire life in modern realities. The role of the teenager virgin Mark, played by Carrey, gave a boost to his acting career and became the first step to celebrity and recognition. But the closure of the Duck Factory wrecked Jim. There began a rough patch in his career. He was forced to send his relatives back and fell into depression. In 1986, the actor received the episodic role of Walter Goetz in the film Peggy Sue Got Married, directed by Francis Coppola. Despite the difficulties of filming, 20-hour days, 6 days a week, conflict and problems with Nicolas Cage, the film received good reviews after the release. On Rotten Tomatoes, the film received 8 out of 10 from film critics and grossed over $41 million at a cost of around $7 million. It was Coppola's box office success. In 1987, the film got 2 Golden Globe nominations for Best Motion Picture, Comedy and Musical, and Best Performances by an Actress in a Motion Picture, Comedy or Musical, Kathleen Turner, and 3 Academy Award nominations. Soon the actor had the opportunity to take part in the musical melodrama Earth Girls Are Easy by Julian Temple. Carrey's colleagues on the set were Gina Davis, Julie Brown, Jeff Goldblum, and Damon Wayans. The film was originally scheduled for release in 1986, but funding problems, finding distributors, and Temple's meticulous attention to detail delayed the release. As a result, it was released only in 1989 and didn't pay off, earning a little more than a third of the amount that was spent on production. Film critics also didn't appreciate the final result. For example, Leonard Maltin called it an infectiously goofy musical and went on to cite some good laughs and an endearing performance by Davis. In 1987, Jim Carrey married Melissa Woolmer, a waitress from the Comedy Store. They met right in that club, where Jim periodically performed with his concerts. After dating for 2 years, the couple decided to tie the knot. Melissa once told Rolling Stone that it was an absolutely perfect day and that she and Jim were crying like idiots at the prospect of being together for life. By the time of their wedding, Woolmer was pregnant with their daughter, Jane Carrey, who was born on September 6, 1987. And the first period of their marriage was not easy. Melissa worked 2 jobs and Jim was making $25 a night performing stand-up. Despite the fact that the comedian's stage number was very peculiar, he imitated a cockroach and stuffed himself inside a children's piano while another comedian was performing on stage. The public was dismayed, but Melissa firmly believed in her husband's talent. She knew one day he would become a legend. The same year, their daughter, Jane Erin Carrey, was born. Jim sometimes had bouts of uncontrollable aggression. The couple quarreled all the time. In addition, the higher Jim's career went, the worse his relationship with Melissa became. After the death of the actor's parents in the 90s, his mother passed away in 1991 and dad in 1994. He was crippled by depression, and his wife's attempts to help were unsuccessful. Antidepressants also gave little relief. The only thing that could help Jim was a healthy lifestyle. The path to fame was also not easy. Before the first real success in Hollywood, he worked for it for 9 years, and only at 28, things finally got better. In 1991, the comedy High Strung by Roger Nygaard was released. There, Jim got the unusual role of Death, who moonlighted as a driver and offered to take the main character to his goal. There were rumors that Jim accepted this tiny role only because of his friendship with Steve Odekirk, who played this most important role of children's writer Thane Furrows. Their union as screenwriter and actor continued in such films as Ace Ventura 2: When Nature Calls and Bruce Almighty. Despite the fact the film was shot in just 13 days and was not particularly popular at the box office, it pleased with the director's approach to creating an atmosphere of urgency and visual tension. Despite positive reviews and winning awards, the producers failed to secure theatrical or home video distribution. According to Roger Nygaard, "I learned the film industry is like selling shoes. They all want brand names, and we didn't have a brand name. Steve Odekirk is quite well known as a stand-up comic, but that didn't matter to exhibitors. They wanted film names." 1992 gave the world another movie with Jim. It was Doing Time on Maple Drive by Ken Olin. It was the actor's first dramatic role after a series of comedic characters. He played an imperfect son, Tim, who grew up in a supposedly ideal family. Later in an interview, director Ken Olin said that if he knew about Jim's comedic past, he probably never would have cast him as Tim. But everything worked out as it should. Jim flawlessly portrayed the alcoholic Tim and gave the world the opportunity to see him in a different way, to look at his dramatic talent, which later was able to be seen in all its glory in his other works. At the same time, Carrey starred in the comedy television series In Living Color, which aired on Fox in 1990 through 1994. Thanks to the non-standard sketch show, Jim became loved by the audience in such an image that played into his hands for a long time. A lot of antics, reincarnations, and far from gentle humor. One of the most popular was the image of security inspector Bill Burns and female bodybuilder Vera DeMilo. In addition, in 1991, his own project was released. It was the show Jim Carrey: Unnatural Act, which he dedicated to his mother, who died shortly before. Another interesting fact indicates the purposefulness of the actor.
And I actually wrote myself a check, and this is for real. This is not a joke. This is for real. I wrote myself a check for $10 million per picture.
And if by this moment it was not a realistic amount for the actor, then soon everything changed dramatically. Either Jim had a presentiment or faith in his own strength helped him. But already in 1993, Jim got a role that radically changed his life. He began filming Ace Ventura: Pet Detective, a low-budget film directed by Tom Shadyac. The future hit went through a difficult path before being released to the screens. No one wanted to sponsor the script. None of the eminent comedians wanted to take part there. Therefore, Jim himself became a screenwriter. He came up with the image of Ventura, including his famous hairstyle, and tried to improvise during filming. In addition, he invited his favorite musical band, Cannibal Corpse, to participate in the filming. The set was shared with Jim by Courtney Cox, Sean Young, and Dan Marino. Carrey said of his approach, "I knew this movie was going to either be something that people really went for, or it was going to ruin me completely. From the beginning of my involvement, I said that the character had to be rock and roll. He had to be the 007 of pet detectives. I wanted to be unstoppably ridiculous, and they let me go wild." Jim's goal was simple, but at the same time unusual: to make fun of the main character. "My plan was not to join Hollywood, it was to destroy it," he said. And a few days before release, Carrey's manager invited him and broke the news. Two of the most influential film critics, Siskel and Ebert, strongly criticized the film after a preliminary review. But Jim's plan worked. The picture came out on the screens and made a real boom effect. His hero became a pop icon and entered the 100 Immortal Characters according to the Empire magazine. And this role brought Jim real fortune and world fame.
"For God's sakes, Jim, I'm a doctor, not a fool, man!"
The actor was bombarded with offers. The film brought a big final box office of more than $100 million at an expense of $15 million, and the well-deserved MTV Movie Awards presented to Carrey. The Los Angeles Times reported, "Audiences are responding enthusiastically to Carrey's frenzied antics." The film is especially a hit with the 10 to 20-year-old age group it was originally targeted for. Box office grosses indicate that many fans are going back to see the film again. Surprisingly, film critics called Carrey the worst rising star and awarded him the Golden Raspberry for the role of an eccentric detective. Carrey plays like he's been put in a dynamo, and the fee is paid for the calories that he spent. He's a hyperactive weirdo who makes weird faces and twists his speech, Roger Ebert said about him. A rather bloody Dark Horse comic book written by John Arcudi. However, when Carrey associated his hero with his father, Percy, and the flamboyant costume worn by his character The Mask was inspired by a costume once made by his mother, Kathleen, for Jim's first attempt at stand-up comedy. In an interview, he recalled, "My character in The Mask is talking about me. When I put on my mask, I can do anything, be anything. We all wear a mask, and when one guy takes his mask off, suddenly everyone's mask just looks like a mask." And even taking into account the fact that the film has a number of shortcomings, problematic dialogues, not fully developed characters, and sometimes offensive stereotypes, harsh film critics couldn't help but appreciate The Mask, which has become a cult film, especially for Jim's character. But at the same time, the film turned out to be very unusual. It all adds up to something that's part musical romantic comedy, part comic book crime flick, and special effects showcase. There's juvenile humor and nods to Tex Avery, literal eye-popping visuals, swing music, hence making their play to take over a city, and a very smart Jack Russell Terrier. Russell recalled that when he showed the script to Jim, he said, "My God, it was like it was written for me." The role was so fitting. The film grossed $350 million and received nominations for many prestigious awards, MTV Movie Awards, BAFTA, Golden Globe for Carrey, and even an Oscar. And Carrey received a fee of $450,000, which seemed unthinkable before. For Jim, the nomination for the Golden Globe was the first serious recognition from film critics. The next film that continued Jim's success was the famous film by the Farrelly brothers, Dumb and Dumber. The actor got the role of a young limousine driver, Lloyd Christmas. Not to say that the picture was distinguished by the sublimity of dramatic thought. There were flat, below-the-belt jokes, eccentric adventures of the main characters, and Carrey's energy. To make Lloyd Christmas look funnier on screen, Jim removed the filling from 2 of his front teeth. Jim also scored the film's final scene, and it worked.
What's great about it because... Right, exactly. It's like you don't have to look it up, you know, it's just...
I want to see something dumb.
The film was well received by critics and audiences alike, and Carrey received $7 million and his first MTV Award for Best Comedy Performance. However, he didn't cope with the role of husband. Constant quarrels, lack of money, and then the actors' tour schedules finally undermined the relationship between Jim and Melissa. There was another reason. They say that the actor's romance with actress Lauren Holly stirred the pot after the filming of the Dumb and Dumber movie. In the 9th year, the marriage broke up. Jim himself became the initiator. According to Melissa, the day before they celebrated their 6th wedding anniversary, Jim rented a hall for 2 and sang a serenade to her. Then he went to shootings in Florida and never returned. He told his wife about the breakup by phone. Jim didn't deny his guilt. "It's hard to live with me," he once admitted. People close to the family confirmed his words. They say that the actor is a great guy on the first date, but at the same time, Jim desperately needs to be with someone, and then just as desperately needs to be alone. "My first marriage failed because we couldn't have a normal, quiet life. It's very difficult to film, to create, to experience all this craziness every day, and then just return home. After emotional overload, it's very difficult for me to calm down." Divorce was not easy. There was a conflict between the former spouses on financial grounds. Melissa, Jim showed complete disregard for their little girl and called her only once a week during the filming of The Mask. In addition, she argued the $10,000 that Carrey was obliged to pay was not enough for their daughter to lead a decent life. In its content, the ex-wife of the actor included, among other things, bodyguards, riding lessons, and a luxury car. It's a very tired Hollywood cliche, but it was uppermost in his mind to be a star instead of having an intact family. We knew the pitfalls, but he didn't keep his end of our bargain. Melissa moved to New York and remained alone for a long time, and Jim had a rather public romance with Lauren Holly. In 1995, another film was released where Carrey played the role of a bad guy, Batman Forever, directed by Joel Schumacher. The image of the Riddler became another successful image in Jim's piggy bank. Just look, he seems to be copied from him. But later, Jim told that the role was not easy for him.
It was really physically taxing, because it just so much going on at once a lot of the times. There was bombs blowing off and me spinning the cane and trying to think of lines or doing whatever at the same time. And there was a lot of times there was a lot at stake, that I couldn't go back and fix if it didn't go right, so there's a lot of pressure there, but it was still fun.
The actors' partners in the set were such stars as Val Kilmer, Tommy Lee Jones, Nicole Kidman, and Drew Barrymore. The film was a follow-up to 1992's Batman Returns, but the film's tone was changed from Burton's bleak delivery to a family thriller variant with an exuberant amount of color and scenery. That was where Jim's talent came in handy. Unfortunately, the shooting was overshadowed by the conflict between Carrey and Tommy Lee Jones. Tommy literally hated Jim and told him that right during their conversation. And he went to hug me and he said, "I hate you. I really don't like you. I cannot sanction your buffoonery." I was the star and that was the problem, he said. And this was not far from reality by that time. After all, the actor very quickly rose to the level of a star and was the center of attention in any room he entered. Despite this, Jim always stated in various interviews that he had a lot of respect for Lee Jones as an actor. It's possible that the reason for the disagreement was ordinary envy. Dumb and Dumber, where Carrey took part, came out simultaneously with the work of Lee Jones's Cobb, which failed at the box office. The Batman was met with mixed reviews from audiences, but did well at the box office with $336 million and was the second highest grossing film in 1995. It received Oscar nominations for Best Cinematography, Best Sound and Best Effects, and Sound Effects Editing. Jim was nominated for an MTV Movie Award for Best On-Screen Villain. The series of victories was continued by the sequel Ace Ventura 2: When Nature Calls, which grossed twice as much as the first film and a number of awards. The actor received the Kids' Choice Award as Favorite Actor, 2 MTV Movie Awards at once in the categories of Best Actor and Best Comedy Role. However, on the set of this film, things were not rosy. They say that Carrey didn't want to act in any sequel at all. Therefore, when he was persuaded, he created awkwardness on the set and slowed down the process in every possible way. Since then, for almost 20 years, Ace Ventura 2: When Nature Calls has been the only sequel to a film where Carrey starred a second time. Carrey ruined this statistic only in 2014 with the movie Dumb and Dumber 2. 1996 gave viewers another comedy film with Carrey's participation, The Cable Guy, directed by Ben Stiller.
Well, look who decided to show.
The actor played in tandem with Matthew Broderick. At the time of release, it was believed that the picture would bury the careers of both actors. The beloved comedy joke actor got a rather unusual gloomy role, the cable guy Chip, who abruptly turned from a charming weird guy into a maniac who pursued the main character.
I just want to hang out.
The image turned out to be too lively, close, and at the same time, frightening. The film itself swings from thriller to comedy, and sometimes to romantic drama. By the way, Jim had the right to vote on making edits to the script. So during one of these discussions in a bar, Carrey came up with the idea for the Midnight Express parody that appeared in the movie, simply writing "tits on glass" on a bar napkin. During a scene in the medieval times, Jim Carrey improvised by taking Matthew Broderick's chicken skin and impersonating Hannibal Lecter in The Silence of the Lambs. If you look at Matthew's reaction, you can see that his laughter and surprise were genuine. The Cable Guy didn't get huge popularity, but brought Jim $20 million and a number of awards. Kids' Choice Awards in the category of Favorite Actor, MTV Movie Award in the categories of Best Actor and Best Screen Villain, and also a nomination for the MTV Movie Award for the Best Fight in the scene with Matthew Broderick. In the same year, Carrey took part in the program Saturday Night Live. Here, the actor shot humorous sketches and parodies of popular films and celebrities, and also created musical parodies. In the show, Jim was able to show his artistry in all its glory. He sang, danced disco, pretended to be a tourist, played the role of a fitness trainer, and even improvised ballet steps. The Roxbury Guys sketch, in which he starred with Will Ferrell and Chris Kattan, gained great fame, which would later be made into a film, A Night at the Roxbury. A year after the divorce, Carrey was again trying to build a family. Relations with Lauren Holly developed rapidly, and already in 1996, the couple decided to legalize their relationship. The actress denied her involvement in Jim's breakup with his first wife. "They kept calling me a homewrecker. I feel for Melissa, but they were completely apart when Jim and I met." Jim's divorce from his first wife created so much noise, the paparazzi pursued the lovers all the time, and instead of a chic wedding, Lauren got a modest registration. Their relationship lasted only 9 months. An attempt to save the marriage was unsuccessful. There were several reasons why feelings subsided so quickly. In one of the interviews, Jim admitted that he could be too quick-tempered, and during a quarrel, he could throw various objects at walls. Another reason was Holly's love for noisy parties, which the actor didn't appreciate. In an interview, Lauren claimed that the reason for their breakup was the obsession of the paparazzi.
But we made our lives, it was all about running away from them and making sure we had privacy. And when we got divorced, I had a really hard time because no one ever really had the story right or anything, and I always felt like everybody knew my personal business, and not to mention the fact that I was going through a heartbreak. So I would go and get a coffee, and I could swear that the person giving me coffee was like, "Ooh, so sorry, and you're a gold digger."
Jim's rise in popularity didn't end there. In 1997, the cult comedy with him in the title role, Liar Liar, by Tom Shadyac was released. This time can be called the peak of his career. For this film, the actor turned down the role of Dr. Evil in Austin Powers, International Man of Mystery. The story follows a successful lawyer who mysteriously cannot lie anymore. And this feature has two sides, destroying his career and it saves his family. By the way, the role of lawyer Fletcher Reed was originally offered to Robin Williams, but in the end, they settled on Carrey. And they made the right decision. Do you agree?
Yes!
Jim Carrey later revealed that constantly being expected to give increasingly manic performances during the film's shoot eventually took its toll on him. He was so dedicated to his work that in the famous bathroom scene, we don't hear an overdub of sound. Jim actually banged his head on the bathroom, the floor, and the urinals. In one of the interviews, he confessed, "It was this constant suppression of angst, completely freaking out all the time. I would go home with total exhaustion." There is another interesting detail. Even those who watched the cult comedy many times didn't immediately notice that Jim played not one, but two characters in the film. In addition to being the main character, Carrey also made a brief appearance as Fire Marshal Bill, who can be seen in the background with a walkie-talkie in one of the scenes. Liar Liar was a huge box office success, earning over $300 million on a budget of $45 million. The reviews also pleased the performers, with an average rating of 8 out of 10 on Rotten Tomatoes. Even Roger Ebert, who was critical of all of Jim's previous work, praised the film. "I'm gradually developing a suspicion, or perhaps it's a fear, that Jim Carrey is growing on me." But by this moment, Carrey understood that he was cramped in the image of a cheerful wimp. He began to dream of a bright, dramatic image that could reveal his talents, his soul, and potential. And the next role became the first stage of change in the career and life of Jim Carrey. Changes that led to a series of tragic events in the life of the actor. Jim played his first dramatic role in The Truman Show in 1998. There, the actor got the main role of a guy whose life was only part of a cunning and thoughtful script for a reality show. According to the director, Peter Weir was impressed with the actor's performance in Ace Ventura and therefore confidently invited Carrey to take part in his movie. The actor intended to reduce his usual fee of $20 million to $12 million. After working together, Weir admitted that working with Jim was not easy. Mostly, it was because the actor had the right to make edits to the script. But he was interested in Carrey's improvisation. The scene with the mirror in the bathroom was the actor's idea.
I hereby proclaim this planet Trumania of the Burbank Galaxy.
The film drama by Peter Weir was highly rated by critics. It got an average score of 8.5 out of 10 on the Film Critics website. And the consensus said, "A fun, gentle, and thought-provoking film, The Truman Show is more notable for its remarkably insightful vision of the culture of runaway celebrities and a nation with an insatiable thirst for the personal details of ordinary life." Roger Ebert gave the film 4 stars, comparing it to Forrest Gump, stating that he was impressed with Carrey's dramatic acting. Jim received a Golden Globe Award for the Best Actor in a Drama Role for his part. The actor got another non-standard role as comedian Andy Kaufman in the drama Man on the Moon, directed by Milos Forman in 1999. His partners in the set were Courtney Love, Danny DeVito, and Christopher Lloyd. It is noteworthy that the story told about the life of a comedian, which he turned into a never-ending show. At one point, it became difficult to determine where the truth and where the fiction was.
The kid is totally sugar.
A serious approach to his profession played a cruel joke on Carrey. Later, he said that he was so immersed in his role that he almost got lost in it on set. He asked to be called not Jim, but Andy. And in the image of one of Kaufman's characters, he allowed himself insults and curses against the director. In a conversation with The Talks, he admitted that his choice allowed him to literally become a character and live like them. When I finished that role, I took a month to remember who I was. It took me a while and I was depressed going back into my concerns and my politics. But there was a shift that had already happened, and the shift was, wait a second, if I can put Jim Carrey aside for 4 months, who is Jim Carrey? Who the hell is that? But nobody appreciated the efforts of Carrey, especially his colleagues. Years later, on the Off Menu podcast, Martin Freeman commented on Jim's performance, calling it self-praising, selfish, and narcissistic, and also quite amateur. He also opined that Carrey should have been fired from the film for taking his role of Kaufman too seriously. He also emphasized the importance of staying in reality and separating your real self from the role you play. But still, Jim's perseverance again brought him the Golden Globe for Best Actor, even though the film did not pay off at the box office. In 2017, behind-the-scenes footage from the filming was used as the basis for a documentary, Jim and Andy: The Great Beyond, that gave Carrey an Emmy nomination. At one point in the documentary, Carrey suggested that the executives at Man on the Moon Studios, Universal, had tried to bury the footage at that time in order to preserve his image. Speaking in the third person, Carrey says, "So that people would think Jim is an asshole." 2000 brought Carrey 2 more successful works. That time, they were in the genre of comedy. In the comedy drama Me, Myself, and Irene, he played police officer Charlie Bailey Gates, who suffered from a split personality. The second person was not as pleasant as the first. Therefore, the story took an unexpected turn when the main character met a girl named Irene. By the way, Irene was played by Renee Zellweger, with whom the actor began a relationship on the set in 1999. It was Jim who chose Zellweger as his partner in the film. He saw her photo and said, "I will only shoot with her." Their acquaintance was very unusual. Zellweger vividly remembered their first meeting due to the embarrassment associated with the actress's beloved dog. When Wolf and I arrived at the shoot, he suddenly pulled out my hands, jumped into Jim's lap, and made a huge puddle on his trousers. I was shocked because he never comes to strangers. Then I thought it was fate. The couple got engaged, the girl moved into his flat, and Jim literally showered her with gifts. There were a $60,000 ring and furnishings for her new home in Los Angeles. What Carrey ultimately loved about the multi-award-winning actress was that she thinks having a good time is renting a U-Haul and taking furniture to Texas. "She's real in that way, and I absolutely love it," Carrey said about her. The actress also described their relationship as an unexpected, wonderful thing. But their relationship lasted about a year. The couple did not officially mention the reason for the breakup. Grinch director Ron Howard said they were pressured by the increased media attention to their relationship. However, Zellweger's side revealed that the couple wanted different things. According to rumors, the girl was already choosing a wedding dress when suddenly Jim suggested postponing the wedding date. A lot of time passed, and when Renee set a condition for Jim, either a date or a breakup, he said, "Do whatever you want." Later, he admitted that he was tired of proving his love to her every day and that she has a lot of complexes. But in an interview with Howard Stern, he called Renee special.
When you say in the book, "Hey, the great love of my life was Renee Zellweger," you say it, Jim Carrey the character, but I'm assuming that that's true.
Well, she definitely was special to me, very special. I think she's lovely.
After breaking up with the actress, Jim was noticed first with the doctor Tiffany Silver and then with fashion model Anine Bing. But those relationships also became short-lived. In addition to Irene, the family comedy How the Grinch Stole Christmas by Ron Howard was released the same year. It is not difficult to guess from the facial expressions of the protagonist that the green and not very pleasant guy was Jim in costume. The film received mixed reviews, although it earned more than $340 million worldwide. In addition, it brought Jim the MTV Movie Award and a Golden Globe nomination. The Majestic was released in 2001. It's a melodrama by Frank Darabont, starring Jim Carrey and Laurie Holden. The picture tells about the choice of a person, the knowledge of the main character. He ponders about who he is, what his real values are, and tries to find the meaning of life. Jim was able to reveal himself as a drama actor to the fullest.
I've never been a man of great conviction. I never saw the percentage in it. And quite frankly, I suppose I lack the courage.
The film became an outcast since it revealed too many sharp and uncomfortable behind-the-scenes topics. Jim strongly disagreed with it. "I would send to hell all the film critics who scolded my film Majestic. Then I would start a new utopian society in which people would be like rubber dolls. I would wring the necks of the critics, and in a second their heads would be back in place." 2003 allowed the audience to enjoy Carrey in another colorful comedy, Bruce Almighty by Tom Shadyac. It's a funny story about Bruce Nolan, who was allowed to try all the divine possibilities for himself. Jim's colleagues on the set were Jennifer Aniston and Morgan Freeman. The film grossed a massive $484 million at the box office and received mixed reviews from critics. Roger Ebert gave it a 3 out of 4 star rating. Another villainous job was Carrey's role in the family film Lemony Snicket's A Series of Unfortunate Events by Brad Silberling. He perfectly got used to the role of the malicious Count Olaf. Sometimes he even slightly overacted. Perhaps it was deliberately to show the hidden irony, insincerity, and falseness of the protagonist. But some commentators noted that Carrey did not change. His style was clearly seen through the films, and it was not very clear whether it was a trick or a rigidity. The dramatic drama with elements of fantasy, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind has a special place in his filmography. There, the actor played with an excellent cast. It included Kate Winslet, Kirsten Dunst, Mark Ruffalo, and Elijah Wood. He got the role of Joel Barish, a dull, reserved, discreet person whose life changed dramatically when he met a blue-haired girl named Clementine. The film told about love as a constant, since despite all the attempts of the main characters to erase it from memory and rewrite their lives, it only did not go away but also strengthened at its core. The more Joel tried to forget Clementine, the more he clung to the memory. But Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind was not only about love. It had the undercurrents of revealing the theme of codependent relationships, the formation of the image of a beloved in his own fictional world in which we believe, in which you want to believe. And Jim did a great job. The viewer gets the feeling that he lives this role and sincerely experiences all the troubles and worries of the protagonist. Jim's own love experience helped him get used to the story. Carrey once revealed to CBS News that a story that revolves around the tragedy of lost romance was once something that he could personally relate to. I was trying to speak to my ex and all this stuff and say these things, and I mean, artistically, you do that, you know? The director confirmed in one of the interviews that it was Jim's pain that became the basis for his choice for the role. Jim would be out of character, and I noticed a loneliness in him, he recalled. And I told myself, I have to shoot this loneliness. Therefore, it is not surprising that the picture received several prestigious awards, including the Oscar for Best Original Screenplay, and Jim Carrey was nominated for a BAFTA and Saturn Awards. His performance in that film was called the best, most mature, and clearly focused of his entire career. Soon, Carrey returned to comedy. The detective comedy Fun with Dick and Jane by Dean Parasot was released in 2005, starring Jim and Téa Leoni. The role of the actor differed little from the role in Liar Liar. There were the same costume, antics, and acrobatic stunts created to make the viewer smile. Viewers summed it up. He polished the look of tall, clean-shaven, very out of the ordinary, slightly crazy, but solidly dressed, driving a cool car, and seemingly in complete control of his life. The film had no deep philosophical or psychological overtones. It did not aim at it. It was comedy for comedy's sake, and Jim was at his best in comedy. In the same year, he met model and actress Jenny McCarthy, with whom he connected his life with until April of 2010. Carrey has repeatedly stated that he was truly happy with McCarthy. The actor wasn't shy about making romantic gestures, as he once hired a plane on Valentine's Day to write a love message for his girl, J Hearts J, in the Los Angeles sky. The actors refused to legitimize their relationship because they did not need a piece of paper. Jim admitted in 2007, "No, we're never getting married, but we're also never getting divorced," which is fantastic. Despite their reluctance to wear flashy outfits, both partners got close with each other's children. Jane, Carrey's daughter from his marriage to Melissa Warmer, and Evan, McCarthy's son from her marriage to John Mallory Asher. But that relationship also ended. Jenny wrote on her Twitter blog, "I'm grateful to Jim for the years he shared with me. I will still keep in touch with his daughter, and I will always keep Jim in my heart as the main man in my life." Carrey also wrote a warm message about McCarthy on Twitter. The actor wished his ex-lover all the best and thanked her for the time spent together. Fans have long speculated what happened. There were ideas that the breakup was influenced by the tension around McCarthy's son, who has an autism spectrum disorder. According to some rumors, Jenny went deeper into her son's health, and she got deep in the struggle. Post-breakup in 2012, McCarthy put Carrey on blast on Howard Stern's show, saying that he refuses to see her son Evan following their breakup. "I've tried to ask numerous times for Jim to see Evan because my son still asks," the actress told Stern. Carrey's response to her accusation? "I will always do what I believe is in the best interest of Evan's well-being," said Carrey in a statement. The growing depression of the actor played a part in his last role. Jim has suffered from depression, and that might have taken a toll on the relationship. People magazine's senior editor David Kaplan said. And the actor himself did not hide the fact that he was periodically in a difficult state. In 60 Minutes, he spoke about his struggle with the disease. There are peaks and there are valleys, but they're all kind of carved and smoothed out, and it feels like a low level of despair you live in. I was on Prozac for a long time. It may have helped me out of a jam for a little bit, but people stay on it forever. I had to get off at a certain point because I realized that, everything's just okay. It was one of the first public statements in which the actor openly admitted that depression was a significant part of his life. A decade later, he returned to this issue again, openly talking about both depression in general and his attitude towards it. Despite everything, the couple publicly declared that they had remained friends. And even if they were grievances, they remained in the past. Well, the relationship was also in the past. After a 2-year break in 2007, Carrey again appeared on the screens. That time, it was the psychological thriller The Number 23 by Joel Schumacher. The role of Walter Sparrow was a serious derogation from the standard image of the actor. There was no comedy in it and no usual drama. In the film, we saw how Carrey was trying to throw off the usual ballast of a jester and joker to show that he is a serious actor and can play serious roles. But the film was heavily criticized. It was called boring and clumsy. Jim received the Golden Raspberry for his work. The failure affected the actor. What did his audience want to see? It longed for a comedian who became completely unfunny by that time. Glory always burdened the actor, and in recent years it became suffocating for him. In his book, a fictional autobiography called Memoirs and Misinformation, he explored the idea of fame and the many evils that come with it. Per USA Today, at one point in his book, Carrey decides to dress up before bed in case he dies in his sleep. This decision is made after he sees pictures of John Lennon's dead body on the internet. The point Carrey is making is simple. Fame is not easy to deal with. That's a very weird thing to know about yourself, that when I die, someone is going to take a picture on the operating table and sell it. But still, Jim was still trying to fulfill the expectations of the viewer. After all, who will do it for him if not him? Peyton Reed's 2008 comedy Yes Man brought new success. The actor was accompanied by Zooey Deschanel and Bradley Cooper. Carl Allen was a reclusive person who was used to answering no. His life changed with an unusual experiment that turned everything upside down. Does it remind you of something? For his role, Jim taught the basics of the Korean language and also completely waived his fees. Instead, he asked for 36% of the box office. In addition, the actor decided to perform some tricks on his own. For example, he jumped from the bridge by himself instead of his understudy. He also paid with 3 broken ribs for the scene in the bar. The award was another MTV Movie Award for Best Comedic Performance and several nominations at the Teen Choice Awards and Kids' Choice Awards. If you look closely at the face of this elephant, you will recognize Jim. The actor voiced the main character in the cartoon Horton Hears a Who. The elephant has adapted visually to Carrey, with its mouth enlarged to provide a wider, Jim Carrey-like expression. And also, they used a 3D frame to convey the comedian's facial expressions. Speaking about animating a cartoon character, the actor admitted, "They say, this is going to be the simplest process in the world," and completely lied to you. It is hard work. When he was asked what helped him get used to the role of an eccentric elephant, he replied, "Well, myself, I thought of peanuts and peanuts on my breath. I wanted to be the type of elephant that didn't realize that he was enormous and bulky. He was light as a feather, as he puts it, like a dancer. He's not bigger than anybody else, which is kind of where I wanted to come with that character, is that maybe it's an inferiority complex, but he doesn't feel like he's bigger and he feels equal to everybody." The cartoon grossed $297 million and was nominated for several awards such as the Annie Award, Golden Trailer Award, Golden Reel Award, and others. Another cartoon character voiced by Carrey was Ebenezer Scrooge in A Christmas Carol by Robert Zemeckis. The cautionary tale was created using motion capture for greater realism. As Carrey noted, the script of the film was close to the book, and the 4 different phases of the life of the main character required a lot of work from the actor, both vocally and physically. At the same time, Carrey tried to convey English and Irish accents as accurately as possible, counting on a favorable reception of the film in the UK. Carrey spoke fondly of his role as he liked not only the character, but also the process of working on the film itself. The actor admitted that working on Ebenezer was important to him, as the role allowed him to master different images and expand his horizons. You're literally in an empty warehouse with cameras around you, and you've maybe a frame or a fireplace or something like that. Then you rehearse, and they go, "Can we take this away?" And you're sitting on a chair, and you have to create the entire world in your head. Not only that, but you're working with other actors, and you're in this ridiculous mocap suit with balls all over your face, with a hat and pincers that come down with cameras in your face right there. So the real work of it is transcending all of this, the lack of stimuli, and this stimuli that's right in your face and create the reality of the piece, Carrey explained.
Good heavens. I was bred in this place. I was a boy here.
A Christmas Carol broke the budget by grossing $325 million. The work was favorably welcomed by critics, and the consensus was, Robert Zemeckis' 3D animated take on the Dickens classic tries hard, but its dazzling special effects distract from an array of fine performances from Jim Carrey and Gary Oldman. Roger Ebert also favorably appreciated the cartoon and gave it 4 stars out of 4. But the actor's interest in serious roles was not exhausted. The romantic tragic comedy I Love You, Philip Morris by John Requa and Glenn Ficarra was released in 2009. The film was based on the biography of a con man who was gay, Stephen Russell, played by Jim. That was the first role in which Jim plays a gay man. The real Stephen J. Russell was unable to see the entire movie, but he did manage to watch a few videos on Google and was blown away by Jim Carrey's portrayal of him. His partner in the film was Ewan McGregor. Such changes in the image were ambiguously accepted by the fans of the actor. For someone, such a reincarnation was a disappointment, a vulgarity. For others, it was another reason to see Carrey in a new role. And Jim had the popularity to open new horizons. Many believe that the tragicomedy about the everyday life of a gay swindler in an easy, unobstructive manner was able to demonstrate both his talent for impersonation and the ability to play drama. Jim Carrey is simply unique. He created one of the most colorful characters of recent times. In this role, he was in his element, one of the reviewers said.
I'm gonna take care of everything.
Enough romance. Let's fuck.
The film was almost banned in theaters, all because it was considered too homosexual. That is why, at the request of the distributor, the producers were forced to cut 2 explicit scenes and reduce the number of references to same-sex love. Despite the modest box office, the movie grossed a little more than $20 million, and connoisseurs of amateur cinema rated the film on average of 7.1 out of 10. Damon Wise of The Times gave the film 4 stars out of 5, stating, "I Love You, Philip Morris is an extraordinary film that serves as a reminder of just how good Carrey can be when he's not tied into a generic Hollywood crowd pleaser. His comic timing remains as exquisite as ever." The next year, Jim was waiting for another interesting project. He played Ronald Reagan in the short film Presidential Reunion. They were the alive and dead presidents of America who advised Barack Obama on how to fulfill his presidential duties. It turned out to be a funny sketch. As Jim said, "This will kick your balls." And that is how the behind-the-scenes part of the video creation looked like.
It's the right weight. It's the right weight.
Does it feel good to you?
It's, yeah, they're definitely Republican.
Green, but we get close-ups of everybody looming over saying,
Got a wall? Need it taken down? That's how we do it.
2011 was one of the most productive years in the last decade. Carrey appeared in The Office in a cameo role as a guy from Finger Lakes and also in the TV series Drunk History as Santa Claus. Another work was the role of Tom Popper in the comedy Mr. Popper's Penguins. It differed little from the classic role since he was a successful broker and at the same time a selfish and narcissistic guy in a good suit, who by the will of fate completely changed for the better. Well, on the way to change, of course, he grimaced and joked. The film was in the classic Jim Carrey style, kind and family. It could be considered the last major solo project of the actor under 50 years old. A kind and naive comedy received mixed reviews from viewers. On average, it got 4.5 out of 10. It grossed $187 million with 55 spent. For his role, Jim was nominated for the Kids' Choice Award for Favorite Movie Actor and the Movie Guide Award for Most Inspiring Performance in Movies. He took part in Dave Williams' comedy television series 30 Rock in the slightly crazy episode Leap Day in 2012. The role of the lawyer who suddenly became an amphibian in a blue boater fitted into a series of comic images of Carrey.
Son of a glab.
The scene parodied both his film Liar Liar and the 2007 film Evan Almighty, which was a sequel to his own 2003 Bruce Almighty. The character's appearance underwent an uncontrollable transformation that he tried to fight off, much like Evan did in Evan Almighty, as well as trying to reconnect with his son and solve the big case from earlier, as in Liar Liar. The episode seemed to parody bad Christmas movies, but the fictional holiday was so well thought out in detail that the viewer could not help but believe in the reality of the fictional tradition. And go to Google on the internet. After a short relationship with Russian student Anastasia Vitkina, Jim met a girl whose relationship left an indelible mark on the actor's life and career, and also led to several years of litigation. This, as you probably already guessed, is about the Irish Cathriona White. Cathriona was a makeup artist and had frequent contact with the actor on set. Their relationship was reclusive from the start. By the time they met, Cathriona was in the United States illegally and was constantly afraid of deportation. That led to her avoiding social gatherings where Jim was due to appear. The actor began to cover the depression again by that time. From time to time, Jim and Cathriona locked themselves in his house, drew the curtains, and did not go out for several days without communicating with anyone. Joint sadness brought them closer, but could not keep the relationship. Therefore, already in 2013, the couple broke up. Here's what Jim said after that. "Yes, we broke up and don't see each other anymore, but I still think she's beautiful." Jim was engrossed in work, and the girl married another man. But participation in the low-budget comedies was a manifestation of stagnation in the career of a popular actor. Carrey was less and less in shooting with his significant roles. That is why the next image became cardinal. The incredible Burt Wonderstone by Don Scardino was released in the USA on March 15th, where Jim had one of the main roles. He played the street magician Steve Gray. It was a brutal, hairy, fame-obsessed, and completely crazy character.
Congratulations. You're truly brave. I only hope you're ready to face the fire!
We totally nailed you with that fireball.
David Copperfield was brought in to advise on filming and shared some information about tricks specifically for the film. That information was so confidential that he even signed special agreements that it would not be disclosed. The movie received mixed reviews. Someone admired Jim's newfound energy, his sincere acting, and thoughtful plot. Someone accused the film of a boring script, banality, and predictability. Also, there was a lack of morality. As a result, the incredible Burt Wonderstone did not even recapture the budget and grossed only $27 million. The premiere of the comedy Kick-Ass 2, directed by Jeff Wadlow, was that summer. In the sequel, Jim appeared as Sal Bertolini, or Colonel Stars and Stripes, who in the story taught the dog to bite off the genitals of his enemies. By the way, for the film, the actor himself bought the necessary props to look the same as his character. And many of Captain Stars and Stripes' successful phrases are the result of Jim's improvisations. Later, the actor refused to support the film in the promo, commenting on his decision due to the events of the Sandy Hook school shooting. I did Kick-Ass a month before Sandy Hook, and now, in my right mind and sober memory, cannot support a film with this level of violence. I apologize to everyone busy working on the film. I'm not ashamed of him, but recent events have changed my attitude. Jim's fans divided into two camps. Some supported their idol and admired his honesty. Others expressed indignation at his position. As a result, film critics gave the film a low rating of 3 points out of 10. They overdid it with the plot and added some rudeness and vulgarity, without which it was quite possible to do, some viewers concluded. Carrey's performance in him causes resentment, others decided. Adam McKay's comedy Anchorman 2: The Legend Continues went a little further on the budget. Carrey appeared on the screens in the role of Scott Riles, the host of CBC News. He often grimaced and even overplayed. So much so that you often wondered whether it was the director's idea or just the actor was tired. Anchorman 2: The Legend Continues is not a very funny comedy. It jokes about racists, sex, competition at work, the birth of the most unnecessary news in the world. That is how one of the commentators described the film. and unfortunately, a bright movie and attempts to make the viewer laugh turned out to be a failure.
And the incredibly polite Canadian news team.
What about the French-speaking Quebec news? The real voice of Canada.
Give it a rest, eh?
Give me a break. They can't have news. Nothing happens in Canada.
We're gonna mop the floor with you. We're gonna put the boots to you. Sorry.
But the film earned its part with fans who were able to appreciate the cast and put on the brakes for all shortcomings of the film. Moreover, the tape was nominated by the MTV Movie Awards in several categories: Best Fight, Best Cameo, and Best What the F Moment. I'm not kidding. And there is such a thing. But apparently, there was not enough WTF moments since the prize was still received by someone else. The long-awaited film was released in 2014. Namely, it was Dumb and Dumber 2. The movie was a continuation of the famous comedy by the Farrelly brothers. The world premiere of the film took place on November 14, 2014, 20 years after the premiere of the first part. Jim did not agree to participate in the film for a long time, but after a while, he still gave up, posting the first photos from the set on his Twitter. Perhaps not in vain, as the sequel turned out worse than the first part. We saw aged actors who were trying to prove to the world and to themselves that there was life in the old dog yet. They made faces and gave their best. It was clearly already more difficult for Jim to build a charming fool in Lloyd, and toilet humor did not seem as cute as it was many years ago.
Bon appetit, kid.
At the same time, the presence of serious roles behind Carrey's back gave the impression of a swift step back in the career of the actor. And even though the film beat back the budget at the box office, it got a very low rating on film critic sites. It had an average of 4.5 out of 10. Although, there was a positive side since Jim was nominated in the Choice Movie Actor Comedy category from the Teen Choice Awards, which is always nice. By that point, we saw how Carrey rarely appeared on the screen. It gave the impression that he just stopped taking part in projects. Jim again converged with Cathriona White in 2015. They were periodically seen together in public places. The girl specifically underwent a rite of purification according to the laws of Scientology and believed that it would help her overcome any emotional instability. But the happiness did not last long. A few months later, Carrey finally left Cathriona. And after some time, the girl's friend found her body as well as a note for Jim. In it, the girl confessed her love to the actor, asked for forgiveness, and claimed that she was not created for this world. At the same time, a post appeared on her Twitter blog with the text, "I hope that I was a ray of light in the life of the person closest and dearest to me." Carrey fully paid for the funeral in which he carried the coffin and looked very depressed. But the trouble in the life of the actor was not over.
Soon, Cathriona's husband and family sued Jim, accusing him of using his status and money to illegally acquire the pills that poisoned the woman.
That accusation took on a new round after an old message was found on the girl's phone. In it, Cathriona accused Jim of not loving her, and that the actor had infected her with venereal diseases and many other things. Before, I had nothing, but at least I respected myself and felt like a happy person. You introduced me to cocaine, prostitutes, mental problems, and diseases. You did good for me, but you broke me as a person, Jim. To tell the truth, there is a moment. That letter was written after their first separation, and it remained unknown whether she sent it to Carrey. It was discovered by the lawyers of the Cathriona family who were suing the actor. The therapist who treated Cathriona White told the court the girl had very low self-esteem and feared that Carrey would never marry her and the relationship would end. She was a very impressionable girl. She was afraid that Carrey would leave her. In response, Jim claimed that the girl's problems began even before they met, accusing the girl's relatives of greed, saying that the girl's mother demanded to buy her a house as a compensation. In that regard, he filed a countersuit in court and claimed that he never gave Cathriona a single pill. Via his lawyer, Marty Singer,
Carrey told TMZ, "There are moments in life when you have to come and stand up and defend your honor against the evil in this world. I will not tolerate this heartless attempt to exploit me or the woman I loved." According to the results of the investigation by Jim's lawyers, it turned out that shortly before her death, the girl underwent breast augmentation surgery, and among other things, she was also prescribed oxycodone. The actor soon disappeared from the radar. His friends sounded the alarm. They were frightened by Jim's state since he tightly locked himself in his art studio, where he constantly drew cartoons. Later, he would tell that creativity helped him cope with the experiences of the events of 2015, and loneliness itself did not scare him. Jim was comfortable being alone. In an interview with the Radio Times, he admitted that he understood why many people did not understand his choice to be in isolation. That might be strange to some people, but I enjoy it. His return to the public once again raised the question of sanity. The first time Jim went out in public was in the spring of 2017 on The Jimmy Kimmel Show, giving out phrases such as, "Jim Carrey is a great actor," and "I was lucky to get the part." A few months later, at New York Fashion Week, he looked emaciated and shaved off his beard, although he tried to joke and entertain others. In an interview with E! Online, the actor said strange things in front of the cameras.
I wanted to find the most meaningless thing that I could come to and join, and here I am.
This is a dream?
There's just things happening, and there are clusters of tetrahedrons moving around together.
Okay.
Yes.
So what's happening in our world right now? Because there is a lot of news that actually is relevant that's not that
Here's
uplifting.
the thing, it's not our world.
None
That's
of this
the
is
key.
real?
Nope.
So you're just passing
We don't
through.
matter. We don't matter.
Oh, wow.
There's the good news.
Okay.
Those words, according to Cathriana's lawyers, indicated Jim's mental problems. The development of this story ended on January 25, 2018, when the court acquitted actor Jim Carrey in Cathriana White's case. The actor began to become intensely interested in painting due to the fading of his career, which until then was just his hobby. Jim said that acting has remained a therapeutic direction for him since his job as an artist is not only to entertain the audience and to help them forget their worries, but also to talk about them. He explained the decrease in the number of projects to an increase in the role of corporations in the business and a decrease in the creative approach to making films. Therefore, he chose painting as a new way to realize himself. To me, it's just another way of creating. It happened. It was inspired by broken hearts, and I've had a few. It was inspired by that, by the need to express something immediately and not wait for a green light committee or a script to be perfect or any of that stuff. Here's an idea. I don't even know what it means yet. I'm going to paint it, I'm going to sculpt it, and then it will tell me what it means a year from now. It's just a fantastic feeling. In 2017, he released I Need Color, a 6-minute documentary in which he talked about his passion for art and showed his completed work. After the 2016 presidential election, the actor developed his skills as a political cartoonist, delighting his nearly 18 million subscribers with cynical libels about everything related to Donald Trump. And in 2018, he even came under fire for posting an unsightly portrait on his Twitter that looked suspiciously like White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders, with the caption, "This is the portrait of a so-called Christian whose only purpose in life is to lie for the wicked. Monstrous." A drawing pad, a bucket of acrylic markers, and clay turned out to be a great antidote to show business. I knew sooner or later I'd find a worthy way to use Twitter. My manager used to be like, "Don't do stuff on there, you're fucking insane." The next film work of the actor appeared on the screens 2 years after the release of the previous one in 2018, and it was far from comical. Dark Crimes was a crime drama directed by Alexandros Avranas, and Jim was the detective Tadek Drabalski, who was trying to solve the crime and get to the bottom of a terrible mystery of the murder of a businessman. But the viewers did not want to see Jim in a different role. The film was heavily criticized and got 0% on the Rotten Tomatoes site. The website's critical consensus reads, Dark Crimes is a rote, unpleasant thriller that fails to parlay its compelling true story and a committed Jim Carrey performance into even modest chills. Other critics described it as misogynistic, depressive, ugly, and the direction as leady and monotonous in an attempt to imitate the bleakness of Swedish and Norwegian crime imports and ugly, sterile sets. Opinions regarding Carrey's performance were mixed. Some considered his participation as the film's only plus. Others called that role his worst dramatic performance. In addition to several criticisms towards his fake Polish accent, Gleiberman wrote that Carrey broods and stares like an actor who's out to muffle any hint of his natural spirit by swathing it in a poker-faced gloom. And the New York Post summarized Carrey as so muted and sedated, he blends into the background. Another offbeat role of the year was the dystopian horror film The Bad Batch, in which Carrey shared the main role with Jason Momoa and Keanu Reeves. And I guarantee that you will not recognize the actor right away, since his Peter is a crazy but kind homeless man who wanders through the wastelands of the post-apocalyptic world. An unusual plot and colorful characters did not leave critics indifferent. We even found a review that called that role the best in Carrey's career over the past 10 years. It is possible, though sad to admit it. The provocative author's cinema failed the budget. For $6 million, and I suspect it was spent mostly on royalties, the film only grossed about $200,000. Apparently, our audience was not too supportive of cannibalism and pregnant guards. But what is interesting is that the project won the prize of the Venice Film Festival in the category Golden Lion for the best film. It is a matter of taste. And again, 2 years later, Jim appeared on the screens. The series Kidding by Michael Gondry excited the minds of the audience even at the stages of the announcement. That was Gondry's second collaboration with Jim since Eternal Sunshine, and everyone was waiting to see how it would turn out. By the way, Carrey acted there not only as an actor, but also as an executive producer. The main character, played by the actor, was the host of the puppet show, which was loved by both children and parents. He was always happy and cheerful. He amused everyone around, but the man's personal life was overshadowed by personal tragedy, and he had difficulty adapting to personal adversity. Many could not help but notice how amazingly the fate of the protagonist echoed the fate of Jim. There was a general impression that he played, as it were, himself, conveying his own experiences on the screen. The show's executive producer, Michael Aguilar, said, "It's a story about a character who has a larger-than-life public persona that he doesn't feel connected to. Someone who wants to go off-brand, but people keep telling him, 'No, you absolutely can't.' And I mean, that's Jim." Mr. Pickles in the show and in real life were the same person. A person who was archaically kind, indecently merciful, and naive lived in an evil world full of negativity, bitterness, and cruelty. There were no good ones and no bad ones because everyone was corrupted and distorted in some way, and everyone was sick from some disease. The main conflict of the series affected the basic things, the opposition of ideals, good, evil, and everyday life. Several worlds collided here, inner, imaginary, and real. Carrey was as natural as possible there, and in the series, you could find references to the main works of the actor over the past 30 years, like The Mask, Liar Liar, Bruce Almighty, The Truman Show, and Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, etc.
Pink misting him through his kitchen window. I've never been to Lebanon or Iran. Never known the thrill of sipping the Shah's contraband tequila from the cold navel of my 100th kill.
And the drama and comedy in the show were neither alternated or mixed, and it's hard to imagine someone more suitable for the main role. Kidding received 2 Golden Globe nominations for Best Television Series and Best Actor in a Television Series in 2019. The latter was, of course, for Carrey. But the series was canceled after the second season. Most likely, that was since the series gradually lost ratings with each new release. Showtime declined to give a reason for the series' cancellation and only thanked the writers, including Jim Carrey, for their contributions. On the set of the series, Jim began a relationship with Ginger Gonzaga. They met during the filming of I'm Dying Up Here, where Carrey acted as an executive producer and the girl played one of the roles. They soon walked the red carpet together at the Beverly Hilton for the 76th Golden Globe Awards. The event was the couple's first public event and was just a couple of months after Jim admitted to living an isolated life. "You could describe my home life as an isolated life. I spend a lot of time by myself, but I like being by myself, so it's okay. That might be strange to some people, but I enjoy it." But the relationship between them lasted a little more than half a year and the lovers broke up. In recent years, the actor has again returned to well-known comic roles. And so, Sonic the Hedgehog was released in 2020, in which Jim got the role of an anti-hero, Dr. Robotnik. He clearly fitted into the villainous role, making it lively and charismatic. It was evident that he was trying to play everything clearly. Despite mixed reviews, the film received a sequel, and video game fans were able to admire the bald actor as early as this year in the film's sequel. Last year's animated game comedy Space Jam: A New Legacy was a less successful project. Carrey voiced the already familiar role of Mask. It was a box office flop, grossing $162.8 million worldwide with a $150 million budget, and received mostly negative reviews from critics who thought it was a boring commercial for Warner Bros. Intellectual property. And it also received 3 Golden Raspberry Anti Awards, including 1 for the worst actor. Despite the efforts of the actor, recent work has shown that the energy has dried up, and he apparently began to understand that. This year, Jim announced that the second Sonic will be the last in his career, and the actor himself is retiring. "Well, I'm retiring. Well, yeah, probably. I'm going fairly serious. It depends. If the Angels bring some script that's written in gold ink that says to me that it's going to be really important for people to see, I might continue down the road, but I'm taking a break." Carrey explained that at the moment he is very attracted to a measured life, as well as the opportunity to be creative. "I really like my quiet life, and I really like putting paint on canvas, and I really love my spiritual life, and I feel like, and this is something you might never hear from another celebrity say as long as time exists, I have enough. I've done enough." But this does not mean that the actor has completely disassociated himself from the outside world. In 2022, after the start of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, Jim Carrey tweeted that he was heartbreaking for a grandiose political jerk. In response, in the fall of the same year, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs imposed sanctions against Carrey and many Canadian famous people. Among those who were banned from entering the territory of a non-state was the famous writer Margaret Atwood, who wrote on Twitter that she planned to go to Moscow with Jim Carrey, but would go to Kyiv. To which Carrey replied in the same joking manner, reminding them that they also always have Paris. Carrey's retirement from the screen marked the passing of an era. It marked the passing of bright, comical, wonderful in their madness characters, deep, sincere, and tragic heroes. But our team is sure that the famous actor will delight us with talents in other areas of art.
Oh, and in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.
We hope that you like this video and you will watch other equally exciting videos on our channel. Click on the icon that appears on the screen and watch. We will always be glad to your subscription to our channel. We have a lot of iconic celebrities in our plans, inspiring with their stories. And that's all for today. It was Biographer with you. See you later.